we're definitely ready to get started here. And I'm just so happy to have Michael Harris with us tonight. And, you know, he's just doing so much with the Black history of California, has been working on, you know, the Folsom Lake, you know, area and the Black history around that for many years, I've discovered as I started to just, you know, search the internet. So please, Michael, introduce yourself and tell us, you know, a little bit about your background with these topics tonight.
Sure. First, I want to thank you for inviting me to come and share some of the data that I have and this very pregnant time in our history to really dive down and understand what it means to form a more perfect union, what it means to be American. And this year will be my 40th year high school reunion, where we graduated in '81 in Valley High School, and it's really interesting to talk to some of the guys and gals that we went all the way through from elementary school in South Sacramento all the way through, and it was funny every time we graduated, so to speak. It was always new. When we went to James Rudder, it wasn't new, but all the rooms and dorms that we had were new. And then when we went to Valley High School, it was brand new. So, it's just a blessing. I need to figure out, William, we're gonna have to plug this. How come this is saying battery low? It's plugged in. Yeah, I'm having a
Technology.
Oh, there it goes. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was born and raised in Sacramento, McClellan Air Force Base. I wouldn't say a brat of the Air Force, but we didn't move around a lot. But my father served, and I have two brothers and one sister, and I was the only one that served. I'm a veteran, Army veteran, and fixed medical machines, biomedical equipment repairman in the military. Worked a lot of different jobs. Locally, the big ones were, I worked at Procter & Gamble, one of the largest consumer product companies in the world. And we helped transfer the big boxes of Tide into little boxes. Some of you might remember that. And I was able to get to see a lot of the factories and a lot of the operations of Procter & Gamble around the world, because I helped make that stuff happen. Just being able to know how to sweep the floor and know how the soap is made, know how, learn the systems. And we became like a rapid response team to do it faster. And then they shut down. When I first started Procter & Gamble, there were like 20 manufacturing plants in the United States. And then when we were like, I think it was the fifth or sixth, now I believe there's 3 in the nation that actually still produce. But when I first started, there were 20. So then I took early retirement. Looking back, it probably was a mistake, but that's what I did, and took money out of my retirement account and opened up an African museum, because I felt that the history that wasn't taught to me, and I knew a little bit, I needed to figure out a way to share the history with others. And fortunately, I have some of the best teachers on the planet. And I mean that for real. Folks that set up the first Black Studies program in the United States at San Francisco State. The museum that you see here on the screen is in Senegal. And one of my teachers, Dr. Theophilo Benga, and his teacher, Sheikh Ati Diop, that's there, a tribute to them. On the other side of the screen is an actual wooden ship that's outside of the pyramids in ancient Kemet. We call it Egypt, but the people that built that called it Kemet. And so this whole history that, again, 40 years ago, I was at high school, was denied. We had no real history of Black contributions in California. Thankfully, my history teacher, she says, hey, look, you got your A, you're going to give me oral reports. Dr. John Hope Franklin wrote a book, From Slavery to Freedom, so I had to give her oral reports. But that's was my introduction. It just blew my mind. And then so when I finally was able to meet Dr. John Hope Franklin, you know, in Durham, North Carolina, and I was sharing him what, you know, how important his book was to me. Was you know, as a high school student, and then as a grown man, being able to share some of the things that I've done, and we just had a nice conversation. You know, so some of the things he and I talked about is what the work that needs to be done. And so now the museum that's in Washington, D.C. is something he helped make happen. And we need to do that here in California, because the California African American Museum down in Los Angeles is good. However, here in Northern California, the MOAD in San Francisco is good. And that's primarily an African focus. But when we talk about people of African descent in the gold rush, there's absolutely nothing. When you talk about the 170 years of African people here along the American River, Sacramento, there's absolutely nothing. And this is the 5th largest economy on the planet. And, you know, there's a lot of excuses, but the reality is we just haven't done the work. And so now we're doing the work. So with that kind of convoluted introduction, I'll dive into it, if that's okay.
Please, thank you.
Okay, so the idea of Black history, in my mind, started in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
And when being came into being, as some of the ancestors teach, that is part of what makes us all human beings, is because there's a spark of divinity in all of us. Now, how that comes to play out, it depends on who you are, what your culture is, what language you speak, what your gender is. You know, I have 4 daughters, 1 grandson, so you know they keep teaching me every day. So this is some of the this picture here is ancient committance, and you know, it's circumnavigating the globe, ocean-going vessels. Certainly along the Nile River, which is 4,130 miles. In some places in the cataracts, they have to pick it up. But when you're able to move very heavy objects, you know, this is ocean-going vessels in ancient Egypt. This is when I was in South Africa. Oddly enough, when I got off the plane, I was in a place called Polokwane. And, you know, I'm in the dirt, tasting the dirt, and people were like, "What are you doing?" They were like, "Yeah, that's that ag guy." And the guy, his name is Cyril Ramaphosa. And today he's the president of Africa. And people's like, "Yeah, he's not going to remember you." I said, "Yeah, he's going to remember me." But this is the Sand people, and their mitochondrial DNA is as old, if not older, than the mitochondrial DNA in the Olduvai Gorge, which is, you know, people say Ethiopia and Lucy, but these folks in the San in South Africa, you know, could be or may be the same people. They are just different culture and different geography. And this here is Olmecs. And again, we have ocean-going people that heavily influence the populations here in the Western Hemisphere, the Olmec people. And so these ocean-going vessels, Masa Musa, you know, the ocean currents that, you know, the Navy uses today are old. They're the same currents, and other people knew about them long ago. And so when you have ancient scholars talking about the Ethiopian Ocean, and it's not Ethiopia, it's Ethiopia. And when you have a landmass and the water off that landmass is called the Ethiopian Ocean. And these currents, the Tropic of Capricorn, the equator, the tropic, will take you straight to the Western Hemisphere. So there was influence there. And these are the currents. And, you know, there was the perception by some that you would be crazy to go too far out in the ocean because you're going to fall off the cliff. You know, that was some people's desire to maintain control and don't want you exploring the world. So unfortunately, in my opinion, the statue in the state capitol of Columbus on bended knee to Queen Isabella was removed. And there's not good information on where it is now. But you know, there's a lot of reasons for that, primarily probably COVID. They got other things to worry about. But the idea that Christopher Columbus on bended knee was it for years in the state capitol, and you know, we need to preserve our history, not just remove it just because of the political expediency from folks that clearly don't understand what they're doing. So these are early maps, and many people for so many years thought that California was an island, and that's what they drew on the maps. And primarily because if you spend any time along the coast, you know that it gets pretty rough. And if you ever been to San Felipe, you know that, and I'm talking about what we call Baja, the Gulf of Mexico, you know, 30-foot, you know, changes in the surf from high tide to low tide. And so if you in a sailboat, you know, you're not going to stay around there. You're just going to say, we can't go up there. There's an island. Well, it's a peninsula. It's not an island. We know that now, but the early maps, you know. So then quickly, this is Alta California, because this was Mexico. For 300 years, it was Spain. And then for about 25 years, it was Mexico. But Alta California is where Negro Bar, Negro Hill, you know, Negro Village, along the American River. Before that, it was called the Blood River by the Russians. Before that, the Native Americans had names for it. But when Americans started coming through the area, and they came through the American River, but this was still Alta California. And the capital of Alta California was in Monterey. And so these are what these images are what the Russian artists drew. The one on the far left, the woman, that's a depiction of Queen Calafia. You know, there's all sorts of discussion on the name of California, but that's an artist's depiction of what she looked like. But clearly these other images were from the Russians when they were, the Russian American Fur Company, when they were in Sitka, Alaska, and part of, you know, the early colonization and exploitation of the land for, you know, the bounty that was along the American River. And so, interesting enough, we were talking about the AME Church earlier. In Boston, Massachusetts, and in the New England states, we have what's called blackjacks. And the whaling industries is the most underutilized place for source documentation of the gold rush, because they were the first gold miners, the whalers. The headquarters for the world whaling industry was in Hawaii, because that's where the whales, in their migratory pattern and in their desire to, you know, mate in a hospitable environment, which we might want to revisit that as human beings, because Hawaii is a beautiful place. But the whales and the whalers were the early African Americans that were here in the gold rush that came in the age of sail, were whalers. And there was a significant number of Hawaiians that were here. They were sent here by King Kamehameha Witsutter. 10 of the 14 or 13 people that were Witsutter were actual military men in Hawaiian Sandwich Islands, as it was called then. Here is the port, again, the age of sail, and the ships, the house on the waterfront, the warehouse there is William Leidesdorf's. Right behind that is his house. You know, and he's the African founding father of California, you know, elected treasurer of San Francisco, and his 35,500 acre ranch here along the American River Parkway is the place in question today. So you had Negro Bar, Negro Village, Negro Hill. From Bradshaw Road to the county line, today is William Alexander Leidesdorff Jr. Memorial Highway. The legislation was ACR 131 by Dave Cox, 2004. And, we spent a lot of energy and effort to make that happen. And somehow, mysteriously, that sign is gone. The same way that some people want to erase history. So the folks here are very commanding leaders, and not just Black leaders, commanding leaders in California. On your far left, up top, is Governor Pio Pico of the state of California when it was in Mexico. The man next to him is James Beckworth, who found the lowest elevation over the Sierra Mountains. A lot of people's lives were saved because of his ability to get through the mountains and save people's lives. William Alexander Leidesdorff, the African founding father of California, built the first public school in the state. His steamship is on the state California. Next to him is AME minister, Reverend, what is your name? Reverend Burt, Sam Burt. I'll come back to him. Down at the bottom, and I put the women down at the bottom because, I have 4 daughters, and women usually are the keepers of history. It was some strong women that were my early teachers. I'm blessed to have 2 mothers. But down at the bottom is Biddy Mason, and she helped build the largest Black church in LA that's still operating today. She was walked out here behind the Mormon train, tending cattle, but she was one of the richest real estate people in LA. Next to her is a lady, Sylvia Starks is on the money in Canada. So here in California, when the gold rush petered out, some folks had to leave, and she went up to Salt Springs Island in Alaska, and just did amazing things. Next to her is, some of you might be familiar with her picture, because she's, after the gold rush, she purchased the land where the original gold discovery site was, and the 300 acres surrounding that. And it's just a beautiful story. When she was enslaved and was forced to relocate, they snatched her baby from her arms, and she was able to get him back. It's just a beautiful story. Again, made a lot of money the gold rush, and parlayed that into a rather extensive agricultural empire. Next to her is Mary Ellen Pleasant, who, again, in San Francisco, where a lot of the gold went to be, invested or just like today, San Francisco is the richest city in America prior to the COVID. And, there was a significant African-American, well, at that time we were Pan-African. We weren't quite American yet till the end of the Civil War, but Mary Ellen Pleasant, just a powerful woman. And so here we are in the mining district, and it is an amazing opportunity to tell the authentic story. Unfortunately, most people are satisfied in using 1960 story to tell an 1860 story. So if you talk about the gold rush, and you're not a 49er fan, you're not even going to say 1849. But if you're a 49er fan, you're going to talk about 49, because 1849 actual gold rush happened in 1848, and oddly enough, it's going to be this weekend in 1848 that gold was found, and everybody who's a manager know good and well the manager didn't find nothing, the workers did. And he gets a lot of credit, and he should, but he didn't own the place, and he was a foreman, and there was a lot of people working there. And oddly enough, the Mormons that were there tell the story the best, because well, you can see Negro Hill and Mormon Island and Negro Hills right side each other. So they were some of the workers at the sawmill in Happy Valley, which is Coloma. That's what the native tribes called it. So Negro Bar, and you can see on the map, and you can kind of see where the original river is. It was a mile-long area, Negro Bar, and the documentation that this land, and you can see the line, the dotted line there from where the crossing is, where the railroad, Willow Springs, that is the delineation of Rancho Rio de los Americanos, Leidesdorf's ranch. And the towns that sprung up on his land, the northern eastern part of his property, all were based upon the proximity to gold. And so, of course, when the gold rush happened, the world rushed in. But at this particular geographical location, the first place in Sacramento County where gold was found and reported and documented was Negro Bar. And so, you know, we have extensive records from 1848 until 1855. Everybody called the town Negro Bar. Everybody that lived in the town called it Negro Bar. Negro Bar Cemetery, Negro Bar, everything was Negro Bar because that was the name of the town. And, you know, when the town flooded, which Sacramento flooded often, if you're on the river and, you know, there's a strong rain, it's going to flood. And so a lot of people moved up to the hill, and there was a town called Negro Hill. But this area here, roughly $200 million in gold was reportedly extracted in this mining district. It wasn't, because again, there was no dam. So, you know, the creeks, the river, you know, even to this day, you know, because there hasn't been much development. Now there's new development, but those creeks, those ancient riverbeds, particularly under the ground, there's plenty of gold in them there hills, plenty. And so this is a picture that's actually in the Folsom History Museum, and it's about 4 by 8 feet. And the Folsom History Museum over the last 10 years, I would say, has done a marvelous job on seeking and representing the actual history of the area. Of course, you know, like anything, I would say I give them 80%, 20% I would do different, but I mean 80% we can live with. And the people that come and go, the source documentation is there. They don't always show it because they can't show it every day, but I mean, the reality is there. So here's a picture that shows Mormon Island and Negro Hill. Again, with Mormon Island, I want to say 56. I was trying to think through. When it burned down to the ground, the Australians, the Sydney Ducks burned it to the ground. And then the people moved across Shaw Bridge on the South Fork of the American River, move it to Negro Hill. And, you know, it's underwater today, but sometimes, some years, there's no water, and we get to see the footings of the buildings there. Again, here's a map, another map. It shows Weber Creek, and some folks know that that's, you know, one of the founders of the city of Stockton. That's where he made his money. Salmon Falls, that's where the Native Americans would, you know, trap salmon because that's sacred to them. And the Hawaiians that were in the area, they're still, I'm drawing a blank. What is the name of it? Kanaka Valley, which is another name for Hawaiian. But if you don't know that Kanaka is from Hawaii, you're not gonna believe it. And I call it a big crystal, a crystal pyramid, which is between the South and North Fork of the American River, and that's Negro Hill. And so that was one of the locations that was being considered for the Transatlantic Railroad. but it was a very, very wealthy site. And the documentation is there. The Stanford brothers moved the Negro Hill because it was just too much money, too much wealth there. Why not be there? And they were there. So the idea that, again, we're in the, this is some old data. It's probably the best data because of, just the way they extract it right now. So this shows that California, in fact, is the 5th largest economy in the world. I mean, United Kingdom is having just as much problems with COVID as we are. So their economy is not doing well either. I think we're probably stronger, in a stronger position as the 5th largest economy. And no different than we all saw yesterday, there is a daughter of California who is of South Indian parents and Jamaican parentage. But she is the vice president of the United States of America, daughter of California. And she is, well, by training, she's an attorney. So we all, we all probably have good and bad experiences with attorneys. But if somebody is representing us on the world stage, a legal mind is probably what you want. And so as we look at the gold rush era, and we look and see how the laws change from Spanish and Mexican common law to US civil law, and the impact that that had on how we still have these contentious arguments about, what did Black people contribute to the forward flow of humanity. Well, if you look at that demarcation point that happened in Monterey in 1848, 1849 at Colton Hall, there's a real need to revisit what the values and belief that predicated the disenfranchisement of people of African descent, because some people still believe that, and other people don't believe that that actually happened. And then people like me is like, whoa, I'm a veteran. We here to form a more perfect union. And, our values as Americans should be equitable across the board, and then teach that to other immigrants that are new, because we didn't come here because we wanted to, most of us. And then some of my family were native and we're here all along, and it's a whole nother conversation. But the idea of in 2021, what makes us American, we need to revisit that and hold people accountable to that. And certainly at a place called Negro Bar, where Black people built a town in 1848, and were completely disenfranchised. We need to preserve that history, but some people choose to erase it, pretend that we don't need to preserve the legacy and the contributions of people of African descent. So I'll stop there and take any questions you may have, and maybe answer some questions and dive into some other things.
That was just amazing. Thank you so much. What a great, introduction to this huge topic. And I'll just say, does anybody want to kick it off with questions? We have such an opportunity for dialogue tonight. And Laura,
jump in. Somebody jump in.
Yeah, well, Laura, if you're still with us, feel free to ask your questions if you have any.
Mm-hmm.
What's really, for me, what's really important is the promises I made to people like June Hose and Chuck Keynes and George Chan, and these are not Black folks. that taught me this history and, you know, told me never give up. And hey, if you don't do it, this will be lost. And were giving me, you know, stuff that I would not have known, and then pointing me in directions of where to find stuff at the Library of Congress in DC. And, you know, well, this book is $100. You just pay me when you get it. I was like, well, you just give me the book. Why I gotta give you $100?
Well,
But he
Michael,
bought
can
it.
I just, I
Sure.
want to just actually go right to this idea because, you know, looking at these different stories that I found, it looked like when they created the state park that they did create a state park, you know, with the name Negro Bar in it. Is that true, or is that a proposed name? I was trying to, I know it's a California historic landmark. Negro Bar was definitely a landmark designated, but did they actually create a historic site and actually designate it as part of the state park system?
No. And what my understanding, and I have, I mean, to me, the source documentation is there in the state of California. It's a state park. The actual, as you see on the map, the actual location of Negro Bar is on the south side of the river. Now, the development there and the wealth there, I mean, you would have to be a stark raving lunatic to try to create a state park on top of that real estate. And so the other side of the river was used when they dammed Folsom Dam, and then down further south is Nimbus Dam, you create Lake Natoma. And so the like any history, if you tell the story of Negro Bar and the adjacent mining district on the other side of the river in a beautiful, pristine park, it makes sense. But again, 25, 30 years, 25 years, kind of like taking bullets and knives, and daggers and stuff, along with, some pretty good friends. We've done, I believe, a good job in preserving the history in Folsom. And now I'm trying to remember his name, Puffer, the Native American store that was in Folsom is gone, but there's not a good representation of the Native Americans that were there, and some of the grinding holes are being destroyed, in my opinion. I just can't find the ones I used to see as a kid. So yeah, the state parks has their records of how and why they named it on that side of the river. And they have, I mean, if you go there right now, and they're doing a better job because now there's some money and there's development there, there's just nothing to say what Negro Bar is and what the contribution has been. Nothing for the Native Americans, nothing for the Russians were there. The Chinese were finally going to get something. So yeah, we just need to take a couple steps back and really do a cultural resource study that has, some folks around the table that have a value and belief different than, the Confederate folks that, put, the most egregious word in the American language on the grave markers of the earliest pioneers. We just need some new people to take a look at this.
Do you want to say anything more about that? Where were those cemetery markers actually?
Well, I mean, that story is pretty well documented, but the idea that at the Mormon Island Relocation Cemetery, there's 13 or 14, I had to look at my notes, mining towns and regions that were moved when that whole area, the mining district, was going to be inundated when Folsom Dam was being filled. But I mean, imagine this. The staging area for the concrete and the gravel that was being taken out of the American River was the very site where the town Negro Bar was. So they completely desecrated that site intentionally. And I mean, the records are there. I mean, the picture, we have the pictures. This is where they could have done it anywhere. But this is the one place that they wanted to destroy, was Negro Bar, because they wanted no mention of it when they built Folsom Dam. And the people that did it were from Vicksburg, Mississippi. So you don't have to imagine why they did it.
Michael, Doug Ketron, I'm a docent at Kennedy Mine, and the adjacent Argonaut mine
Yes.
was discovered by a black man
Yes.
at a ranch. All that hillside between the two mines was also a Negro hill, because they would name place names during the gold rush were named a lot of times by the occupants. So Negro Bar was named that because it was occupied by black miners, and across the river then they were Mormons, so it was Mormon Bar, and we can go down to Michigan Bar, French Bar. So these old names in history go back and tell who was actually there, who was doing the mining. So to erase that name would be to erase the history of who actually discovered the gold and mined it. California came in as a free state with the Compromise of 1850. And that compromise was that slaves that escaped from the South would be captured and returned in exchange for letting California be a free state. So when Southerners came to the gold rush, there were some that brought slaves because they felt that if anybody walked away, they would be caught and returned. So there were slaves brought to California who then became free. And then there were free blacks that came to places like Negro Bar, and it's like the French would congregate, the Arkansas people would be at the same place, and China Camp, for these kind of places. You would have people with a common background that would congregate and then leave their name and leave their history. So the history of black people mining in California is saved by the place names. That tells us that people were here and were important in this gold rush period.
Yeah, you know what? I'm replaying the tapes in my head, and I was at the Kennedy mine, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and you may have been the one. Somebody with your knowledge gave me a book and told me about the history, and I spent a lot of time in Moki Hills, and I appreciate you saying that. But it's there's a lot of people that have the authentic story, and as well as I know, controversy sells, drama sales, doing the hard work, putting together. If you ever did genealogy and trying to find records that don't exist, but they do exist, and somebody had to change one letter because thank you. And you're absolutely right. The mosaic, as Dr. Kevin Starr would say, the librarian, it's the most amazing story in America if we tell the story right, because everybody came here. And everybody was hungry and broke and tired and wasn't no grocery store. So you had to rely on your neighbor. And as you said, everybody kind of congregated to themselves because that's the only way you was gonna get here. You had to rely on your close family. And now here we are, in 2021, we need to figure out how to rely on each other again that's in our neighborhood, and care about their character a little bit more than their color.
Hey, Michael, that's a perfect transition. Vicki Content here with Native Daughters of the Golden West wanted to share, and she works with landmarks and very much what you're talking about with these organizations that supported each other socially. Go ahead, Vicki.
My question is about one of your slides. You had a picture, you had a slide with Biddy Mason and Mary Ellen Pleasant on it, and the other two women, I wasn't sure of their names. Could you tell me who the third woman is?
That's the third woman is, well, next to Biddy Mason is Sylvia Starks, and then next to Sylvia Starks is Nancy Gooch.
Ah, okay.
And Nancy Gooch was in Coloma. She was, again, her and her husband were brought out here enslaved. And worked their way to freedom and became very wealthy, ridiculously wealthy. And if you go to Coloma today, there is her house is there. You know, there's not the documentation is there, but one day we're going to partner with UC Davis or Sac State and have some docents that are actually people of African descent and share the authentic story of what what Nancy Gooch and her family did. Amazing story.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Mark Oliver, did you want to go ahead?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. Hi. I'm on here with Eddie McAllister. I don't think he's got his picture up, but we're tuning in from the second mother lode. If some of the gold mining people might know where that is, but that's Shasta and Siskiyou County.
Ah.
The Salmon River, Klamath
Yes.
River. So on another documentary project about 10 years ago, I found quite a few African American names in the 1850-1852 census. And about 2 or 3 years ago, we actually started a project where there's only 2 written references to any of those African American miners in that area that we've ever found. But working with an archaeologist, we found about 5 mine sites, 3 of them with the pejorative term, not Negro bar, but they called them something else. And actually we found the maps with those names on them. And so our project, we've actually trained community actors from the African American community to kind of reenact the life of African Americans in the remote areas of the gold mining zones of Shasta and Siskiyou. And, you know, so did a lot of research, you know, read Lapp's book and Stacy Smith and, you know, done all that research.
Yes.
But in all the current documentation, our area is not on there. Like in all the Negro mines, they kind of peter out around Oroville. So our goal is to kind of put our area on the map, and we're producing a book on it with different authors and just documentation of our project. And we were doing theatrical presentations, not really reenactments, but almost just embodying some of the stuff from the diaries we found from the Sierras in your area, and then just kind of juxtaposing those with our geography. And we are kind of on our way. We did 3 shows up in Northern California, and we had a show in Chico, and we were going to Oakland. And on the way home from Oakland, after signing a contract at a big theater, we got shut down.
Yeah.
COVID. But I hope you put up your contact info at the end of this, so we can get in touch and just share notes and stuff.
Yeah. That is where you are near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time on Mount Shasta and on Mount Shastina, and Sheriff Byrd is a friend of mine.
Okay.
And the Lincoln Heights Cemetery. I mean, I just marinate in there. People are like, what are you doing? I said,
did you watch the film From the Quarters to Lincoln Heights?
No, no. I go up there personally because I need an excuse to go and get some of that cool water at the source of the Sacramento River and just get away from folks. And trust me, the best place to get away from folks is in a cemetery.
Yeah, I made a documentary on Lincoln Heights.
Oh, you did? Great.
Yeah, and we tried to get the community to put it in the national, the historic register. couldn't quite get anybody to really do that, but it's the state historical society, whatever their official title is. They looked at the site and just said it's a drop, and it's just it would take nothing to get it registered because it's a church,
Yeah.
which you've seen, the cemetery, and the Lincoln Heights neighborhood all rolled into one, and it's a very historic.
No, I'm with you, and I'll definitely put my information up because that is my family story. We didn't go up there, but we my great grandfather was a minister at a lumber town in Louisiana.
Oh,
And
okay.
when I heard that story, it's like, okay, I could have very well lived here. But that's what, in some of my work doing USDA ag policy, I mean, when they said, hey, the money is over, you guys aren't getting subsidy, and they're like, okay, all y'all black folks got to go today. And so, literally, your clothes, your food on the table was left, and you had come out to California. And so that's the story, the origins of Lincoln Heights. It's like crazy.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I made a documentary on it in 2010, which I can, it's online and you can, from the quarters to Lincoln Heights.
All right, I'll definitely, and I'll, my information before I forget is, it's real simple. It's Black Agriculture at Yahoo. And my number is 916-346-3327. And this month is Black History Month. Be persistent, because I'm going to get 1,000 calls.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to quickly just ask everybody that's been talking tonight, Vicki, Doug, Mark, of course, Michael knew from the beginning. I'm not sure at what point you joined, but, we do have a reporter from CBS with us. And so, I think everybody knew that this was being recorded, but I just wanted to make sure, anybody that's speaking, if you have any concerns about using a clip from what you're saying, if you can just let us know now. I'm just not sure at what point the recording and kind of that announcement was made that we actually had a reporter with us. So if anyone who's spoken, again, Vicki, Mark, Michael, of course, you knew that the reporter was with us, but Doug, you were also speaking. Just let us know. I think everybody knew that, but who else out there might have questions? Oh, Vicki has another question. Go ahead.
Well, actually not a question, but I did work with a wonderful person named Ruth Mickelson on a 4-page sort of handout on African-American mine owners in Yuba County. And we did quite a bit of research on those folks. And if you aren't aware of one of those miners, Edward P. Duplex, you might not know that he was the first Black mayor of a city in California in the 1860s. So the Native Daughters of the Golden West just put up a plaque in front of the building that was his barbershop, which led him to invest in a number of other barbershops, in fact, serving the California State Fair in that capacity. He was a well-known person in the area, but this research is pretty particular to Yuba County. So if anybody's interested, I'd be happy to share. I don't know if I can even show it there, but there's been a lot of research done in that particular county.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. And what is really fascinating is the California African American Museum that's down in LA. It was kind of snuck in that expo area through the Department of Agriculture. And the folks that actually put up the nearly $1 billion to create the museum in Washington, D.C., I guess it's because I'm getting older. I wasn't as forceful as I have been in the past. But I believe that we should have like $100 million to be able to document this history, 10% of what they spent in DC, and have, you know, a museum worthy, and look at everything that we're talking about now, and then teach this, and not just Black folks, whoever wants to learn about California history can be a part of it. It's not a Black issue. It is what really happened in California. I mean, if you're cutting down trees on the side of Mount Shasta, them houses were for Black folks. I mean, you know, people had to live somewhere. So yeah, I definitely, I had not heard of Edmund Duplex. What city was he the mayor in?
Edward Duplex. He was the mayor of the city of Wheatland.
Wheatland. Oh, okay.
Yeah, which happens to be in Yuba County.
Well, yeah. Well, so Wheatland, yes.
He was, he also owned a mine. He owned a mine called the Sweet Vengeance Mine.
The Sweet Vengeance.
Yes, which happened to be on the hillside right behind where my folks settled in 1862.
My Lord.
He had the mine in the 1850s, along with a number of other folks who were pretty influential. To be a mayor at that point in Wheatland was pretty exceptional.
Well, yeah. See, the story is very consistent. You had very educated men that came from the Boston, New York area that were God-loving men. And, you know, they knew a little bit about reading maps and charts. And so they were able to find some gold, and they used their money to help build schools and take care of community. And so that's a very consistent story. I did not know he was the mayor. He was elected. That is like, okay, so why was he elected? So the idea that this man, everybody voted for him because of his character, because he had his own money and he was able to help other people, that's a common story.
Well, that was in 1888 that he was elected mayor. But he was also a speaker at the Negro Convention. There were 3 Negro California conventions, and he was one of the organizers and the speaker for that. He was also helped start the AME Church in Marysville. So he was a pretty influential fellow, but he worked with a lot of other people who were doing similar kinds of things. And I think this is the part of history that has been left out of the books that we need to make sure is added.
So I want to just put in a plug. Some of you are familiar with this idea about a California Gold Rush National Park. It's a concept right now, but I think what we're talking about here really is, you know, part of the reason that we really do believe there is a national park significance here to this story, because, you know, it's the story of California, but then it is the role that California, in becoming that 31st state, you know, at that juncture point with the Civil War and everything else, you know, that it had a role in shaping, you know, the rest of United States history. And you know, there's all the rapid social and environmental change that was catalyzed, you know, by that gold discovery that just, you know, brought the big mass migration. But, you know, these pieces of the story that aren't being told kind of comprehensively as a national story are kind of really what we're trying to put together a vision for. And so, and Michael and Vicki and all of you, you know, just please be thinking about, you know, for instance, I guess I was going to throw it out to Michael, you know, do you think, I mean, just knowing what you know about, you know, Black history and the gold rush and this history of California, I mean, as it relates to the California gold rush, besides, you know, clearly Negro Bar, Negro Hill here in this sort of Folsom Lake area is one of the most important sites. And then, you know, we know Coloma is important also for Black community, but, you know, what are other sites that come to mind as some of the most significant, important sites? And then, of course, the Argonaut Mine also seems to be one of the really important sites for this, you know, the Black history, you know, of the California Gold Rush. I'm just wondering what other sites come to mind as, you know, if there's some other ones that we want to make sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, the whole gold mining district, and I mean, we had kind of briefly touched on it, but if you take Highway 49 and you look, and if you say the difference between, mining with a pan versus, mining with a hydraulic rocket water cannon, you get a very different story. But the idea that, and in the Kennedy gold mine, I mean, there's plenty of gold still down there. But the idea that we could tell this story in pieces, and it doesn't have to be a one size fit all, but President Trump did sign a bill, so there's a ton of money now for national parks. There's a ton of money there now for national parks. And so it just matter of getting the right people to coalesce on a site, because the government owns a lot of the land up in the foothills. And it could be a way, we touched on a little bit, it could be a way to begin to revisit on how we take some of the fuel out of our forest while we preserve it. So there's a lot of different ways to go at the story, but I think the biggest thing for me is to take a look at a timeline and really say, where was the early gold and what really happened. You can't not talk about what happened to the Native American, but you don't want to focus on that. You can't not talk about slavery, but you want to focus on that. But if you just say, hey, gold, because everybody know you lose your mind. The love of money is the root of all evil. Everybody know that. But everybody also know you need to have some gold because you ain't gonna live well if you don't have no money. So I think geography, the Coloma area makes sense, but then you can't get a lot of people up there. So you need to, it's something to think about.
So
I
what
think
is your
you're-
vision?
oh.
What is your, I was just going to say, with this Negro bar and this Folsom Lake State, I guess it's Folsom Lake State Recreation Area, I
Yeah.
think is what Negro bar is within the state recreation area. But what is your vision of exactly what needs to happen, with that currently as a state park?
Well, again, we've been at this for a long time, and the city of Folsom's general plan for the Lake Natoma area and the adjacent portions of the park, I'm 80% okay with it all. Their phase 1 of Negro Bar, I would like to see it elevated to equitable, a state historic park, Negro Bar, instead of a subunit of Lake Natoma, Folsom Lake. There's no reason why it should have less than second class billing, less than second class services. I mean, my God, the bathrooms don't even get cleaned. And it's one of the most highly used area because it's so beautiful and people like to get in that cold water when it's hot. So why not provide services there? And then if you look at the other end of Lake Natoma, where CSUS has the aquatic center, I mean, and then the other side where all the development, and I'm going to work closely with Jerry Bernot this year and make it seamless within the historic district, what we're able to do in Negro Bar Park currently. It's moving in the right direction. The challenge is you have, always contentious people that have absolutely no idea what the history is, speaking the loudest, wanting to make a name for themselves and trying to tear up the good work that's been done for generations.
Yeah.
And in a contentious time, because believe me, when the grave said nigger, my hope was that nobody died in the transition from, and we had one fatality that turned out to be not really, kind of sort of related, but not really, not directly. A young kid was found hanging from a tree, and my heart broke. And then when I talked to the family, they were like, no, this ain't, let it go. And I mean, that hurt my heart. But the idea that nobody, we didn't have riots, we didn't have people burning stuff, we didn't have people, it wasn't a contentious thing. We've had more challenges now by, you know, folks that say Black Lives Matter and want to tear up stuff. I was like, well, where y'all come from? Been black my whole life. I ain't never seen you before. And now you. But anyway.
Somebody else had a question. I know we're getting up to 7, but I want
Yeah.
to make sure, because I think I interrupted somebody else. Was that Andrew? Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. This is great. I've just started researching this in the last few months, this general thread, and it's been really fascinating. The question I have is related to a gentleman named Henry Bell. Have you come across him? He actually was murdered in Negro Hill. Are you familiar with his story?
Oh, well, it's probably in the
1855.
archives. I don't see that there's enough negative things.
Sure.
I focus
No.
on the positive stuff right
Right.
now because
No,
there's negative stuff.
Right, I agree, and I'm hesitant to bring it up because I know like
No,
there's
it's okay.
there's problem where African Americans are more interesting to white people when there's violence involved. So I want to acknowledge that. But what's interesting to me about the story is that he was killed in an establishment that was like a multiracial Black-owned bar. But what's really intriguing is that Governor Bigler afterwards, for several months, put notices in the newspapers all over the state offering a $1,000 reward for capture and conviction of the white men who killed him. And so what I'm just trying to understand, like why would the governor have been interested? And you know, it sort of speaks to there being a much bigger story here.
Oh, of course.
That's been swept under the rug.
I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
He was a Mason.
Ah, okay. That'll do it. Okay.
I mean, if there was a nation, I mean, a statewide effort, he was a Mason.
Interesting.
I mean, because
wow.
again, you gotta look at Black folks were not citizens according to the California state constitution. But if you are a Mason and you are a minister and you have, you know, done a lot of stuff on the East Coast with the same people that you're with now, the race didn't matter as much.
Yeah. Okay,
But,
that explains some of it, because like, you know, it's yeah, because I just like, here's a person who couldn't have voted for Bigler, couldn't be expected to vote for Bigler, and couldn't have testified if he'd been a witness instead of a victim.
Right.
So it's just like, it's just so incongruous that he would, the governor would get involved.
Yeah.
But that could explain it.
I go down to one of the Mason halls and check and see if he was a Mason. I'd start there. Because that, I mean, you know, there's only, I mean, you know, my grandfather, he was in Vallejo, and he worked on the nuclear subs over there at Mare Island. And he was part of that fraternity of men.
Yeah.
And there were times when, you know, we go places and, you know, Black people there. And I don't know what he was telling them people, but he was a Mason and we were able to do stuff no other Black folks was able to do.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sure there's more questions out there. Michael, do let us know if you need to go. It's 5 after 7. Are you available for a few more minutes, or do we need
I'm
to?
available, and the host here, he had a question, my friend William Norwood with the Diplomat Center, he's hosting me tonight because I don't fool with this stuff. So you want to come around here and ask your question?
I could do it from here. Can you hear me?
Can you?
We can hear you if you
Mhm.
you might come closer to the microphone.
Yeah.
Good. No, I just, is this good now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment because what you're doing here is so important. I remember, well, I was born in 1953, right? So African American, grew up in a middle class family, went to parochial school. And what deterred me and suppressed me for a long time was the fact that I didn't know anything about my history. I had no contribution. I had, you know, when we would read the history books, it was two people, George Washington Carver, and I don't even remember the other guy. and when and all the words that related to African American or Black man was Negro, and that was it. At a book that had over 500 pages had nothing that, you know, made me feel or could give me any esteem or showed any contribution that I had in this country, in this world. And so I got tired of the kids looking at me every time the word Negro came up, because I was the only Black kid in the school. And I didn't want to go no more. I left, became, you know, started self-teaching myself. And I mean, there was a point in an area in my life that was, you know, just left up to me to decide what I wanted to do, because I had no model, no role model, no one to guide me, no one to encourage me. And this history, and it's not just me, but it's for every nationality that, you know, that we know. We need the, you know, as young people, we need some type of esteem, something to guide us, something that we know that we can contribute. And I think it's important to infuse this into education, the educational system. And if we don't do that, we're going to continue on a path where, you know, people are not interested, kids are not interested. And I think that's what leads us to the criminal or underground world. Because, you know, who's going to give us the esteem we need to carry on? Now, notwithstanding that a lot of African Americans have achieved things, but they were taught. I mean, I don't know. I think one of the most important things is that we take it for granted because we are born in America, our citizenship. But when we see other nationalities, people from other countries come over, they have to be taught citizenship and what their rights are. We take it for granted. We don't even really know what our rights are here. And as a result, a lot of especially in the African-American population, they've been taken advantage of in the court system and the judicial system and in the political system. So I just want to encourage you to continue, you know, with what you're doing, to make it prevalent, public, make it known, because I think that's what's important to, you know, the culture of the country, of America, of the world. I think it's important to explain that so that young people understand or have a guide to where they want to go and who they want to be. And so, you know, I really admire what you guys are doing, and please continue to do it.
Well, thank you so much. And I'll just say, please, you know, join the campaign for California Gold Rush National Historical Park, and, you know, this Black history and the Gold Rush, you know, component. And really, we really are, you know, just, it's been 1 year really that we've been kind of working on this idea. And soon, in about a month or so, we'll be kind of doing a, you know, kind of a big 1 year report, you know, of everything that we've kind of learned as we've been exploring this idea together. And so, you know, there is a website that I've developed. It's, it's fairly simple, but just 1848gold.wordpress.com. And, you'll see more about this coming, but I hope that you'll stay connected and be part of this. And I will say, we're going to kind of unveil an update that's going to actually show about 23 state parks that are part of this national park concept, because of course we've got this, this east-west route. And I loved all the images of the water, Michael, in your presentation. It just really reinforced, this part of California National Historic Trail. Part of it is in the water.
Yes.
We've got this kind of connection growing with the Oregon California Trail Association. We already have, a national historic trail that has been designated, but that's the land trail. That's, the overland, the pioneers, the immigrant trail, and the various routes. But, one idea is that there's a portion of the trail, of course, that comes through the Golden Gate and heads up the Sacramento River, basically, and through the Delta, and ultimately then up the South Fork of the American River, and that actually is part of that trail. And you've reinforced it with your presentation.
Let me tell you this. You remember Humphrey the whale?
Yes, the whale, yes.
Humphrey was trying to explain us this story because the early folks on those ships that's on this picture, they were whalers. So, and for a time, San Francisco, they were whalers. And, Humphrey was trying to tell us, we didn't understand. He said, I can't go no further. Look, I need some salt water. But the legacy of the whale, the migratory pattern of the whale was like oil back in the day. And then so the whale's cousin, the salmon, same difference. He just a little bitty whale. But if we tell those stories, and then we get kids involved, and then we get a whole lot of other folks that aren't necessarily historians, but and here my grandfather jumping on me. If you talk about Jonah in the whale's belly, right?
Oh, I love it. Well, it's funny because the Wakamatsu story of the Japanese colonists also has a whole connection to the whaling that was going out there. And, the whaling is what was bringing all the ships out in the Pacific that were getting shipwrecked and so forth. But so there is just a lot of connections here. And, this has just been such a rich evening of history with you, and certainly, lots to think about what needs to happen there with Negro Bar and that state recreation area. Just quickly, does anybody else have anything else before we call it a night? It's 7:15. And
Marla's waving.
Oh, good. Marla. Do you know Marla?
No, well, I see her waving, so I was asking.
I'm sorry, I didn't see, but Marla covers our north-south Highway 49 mother lode. She's worked on the Golden Chain Heritage Corridor. But Marla, please let us.
Michael, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying.
Yes.
For instance, my mother was born in Baton Rouge and raised in Lake Charles.
Oh Lord! So y'all original Sugar Bowl.
But what I wanted to say was, going forward, at least my idea is, or maybe what I'd like to see, is that we impress upon the park system the importance of interpretation at the sites. I don't know if they could add the Black history to their sites, or have something interpretive that people and children could go and see and understand and learn about the Black history at the heritage sites. I think it would be a wonderful and educational addition, and very, very important.
Well, so my blood sister is, she's retiring as a dean over at Cosumnes River College, and her PhD is in curriculum design. And I think I have roped her into another career. And we've been at Sequoia National Park. She just fell in love. I said, well, you's a Buffalo soldier. you know, you took a punch when you were in, I mean, I really hit my sister hard. You need to know how to take a punch. And I said, I'm not gonna punch you again, but you remember that though. So I'm telling a funny sideways story. If we infuse, like William was saying, and we know that we have to do it, if we tell a story that is in alignment with the standards and practices of the California education system, and then we could actually have field trips at state parks that tell the story that align with what they're supposed to be learning in school, it makes perfect sense. But, you know, we're talking about government, so it's gonna take a while to get it done, but that is the way to tell the story. Because our kids, and I got 4 daughters, and they know how to change oil and change brakes and, you know, bait a hook. You know, they might not do it, but they know because they have no choice. And so that's what we have to teach all kids, not just the ones I love. And so I'm saying that to say, it's not just a Black thing. You know, we can tell the story because everybody in the community was not Black. Everybody at Negro Bar, Negro Hill was not Black. If you go to Africa, everybody ain't Black. So,
Well, is there anything else, Michael? I just want to ask, because we didn't get to hear too much about your Black Agriculture Working Group, that project. If there's anything else you want to say about that, because that sounded important.
It's all connected because, I mean, the idea that the reason why William Leidesdorff selected the site was because he saw the vision of agricultural bounty on the land, the American River. And the actual site that was in production, wheat and cattle ranch, I mean, we have his brand, we know what he was doing. We have an opportunity to replicate that site here in Sacramento County. And we're real close. We had a nice conversation with Sue Frost, the chair now of the County Board of Supervisors. And I mean, if we are going to bring the world to our part of the world, why not showcase what actually happened?
Yeah.
In a way that lifts everybody up, not the Native American, the Russian, French camp, what was told earlier, lift everybody up. And we can do that in a collaboration at the state parks and the national park that we're going to create. The idea is we have to decide that, you know, that's what we want to do, is work together.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has just been amazing, and it's just the beginning because there's so much more. There's the AME church, there's the convention, there's all this multicultural, you know, amazing, rich tapestry that, you know, that we see here, you know, here in our landscape. So with that, it's been a great night. I think we should call it a night, and we will all be back. And Michael, thank you so much. That was just amazing. I have a feeling there's going to be something on CBS 13. So, you know, check it out.
Yeah.
And anyway, happy Martin Luther King week. And thank you so much for making.
Well, the last thing I'd like to say is,
yes, sir.
I hope it does not rain Sunday. But if you can make it up to Coloma, or if you can't make it up, just imagine that this weekend is what started it all back in 1848.
Right.
That's
when gold was discovered. It's this weekend.
It's the 24th, right?
Yes.
January 24th. Thank you for reminding us of the anniversary of the discovery itself. That is a very big deal. And we will definitely keep that in mind. And it usually is a big deal at the state park. So is there anything planned up there that you know of?
Well, yes and no, because, you know, we are in a COVID environment and you're not supposed to plan, but there's some people that have been going up there for a lot of years and they're planning. I said, well, if it doesn't rain, I might make it up there. I'm not going in the rain, and it's supposed to be colder. You know, I'm not going out in the cold. I can't get sick.
Well, that was a cold day in January, I'm sure.
Of course.
you know, when that happened. But anyway, well, this was just amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for being with us tonight, and we'll
Thank you,
be
Michael.
back next week. So have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Be
Bye-bye.
blessed.
Blessings.